So it's been a few weeks since The Last of Us 2 released, and I gotta say, people's gears are getting grinded harder than a Jamaican at a dancehall club. I mean, seriously, this is by far one of the most polarizing pieces of media that I've witnessed in my 19 years of residing on the godforsaken planet that is Earth. The controversy that revolves around The Last of Us 2 reminds me of the dissent that took place about The Last Jedi.
It's time to let old things die.
As acrimonious as this phenomenon is, it really compelled me to investigate more on why people are having these particular criticisms about this game. After spending many days just watching a bunch of different comprehensive reviews and breakdowns of The Last of Us 2, I realized that the idyllic premise about this game regarding the story of revenge and forgiveness, it's not exactly that premise that's rubbing people the wrong way. It's the execution of said premise that's pissing everybody off. In a number of these criticisms, the consensus is that The Last of Us 2 is just a basic revenge story that really just talks about how toxic and corrosive vengeance is and how the story doesn't really try to go beyond that premise at all. However, given all the criticism that this game is receiving, I was actually being reminded of another video game franchise that also was based on a revenge story featuring a gratuitously violent protagonist who embarks on a quest for vengeance given that he lost what he failed to protect. And drumroll please. Alright, who am I kidding? You saw the thumbnail. It's God of War. So I did a bunch of research breaking down God of War and The Last of Us 2, and we're going to compare and contrast how both of those stories portray revenge in different ways, and one pissed people off, and why the other one was actually really praised by pretty much everybody. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so now let's just do a brief little recap of these two particular storylines. The Last of Us Part 2 is set 5 years after the events of its predecessor, and roughly 25 years after the eruption of the cordyceps neural infection. Ellie is now a 19-year-old, just like me, and is now the central character of the story. Our band of heroes are now based in Jackson, Wyoming, and are living in whatever peace and serenity they're able to amass in this post-apocalyptic world, and they live happily ever after. Yeah, no. The player is then introduced to Abby, a character with impressive muscle definition, who eventually crosses paths with Joel, the man responsible for the death of her father, and bludgeons him with a 9-iron or a wedge, I don't know. Ellie commits increasingly gruesome acts of violence that are made at the expense of her humanity. Meanwhile, the player also experiences the aftermath of Abby fulfilling her revenge quest. Abby's journey is primarily based on her experience as a soldier for the Washington Liberation Front, also known as the WLF, and is ongoing conflict with the Seraphites, a clan of religious zealots. In her journey, she encounters two apostates named Yara and Lev, who serve as another vessel of understanding Abby's character on a more intimate level. We then arrive back at the crossroads between Ellie and Abby, which results in Ellie's defeat and almost Dina's demise. Due to Lev's interjection, Abby is convinced to spare the lives of Ellie and Dina and leaves to embark on a more hopeful lifestyle with Lev and attempts to live more peacefully. Until they're captured. Abby's attempt for a remodeled life of peace parallels Ellie, who still hasn't fulfilled herself on the farm with Dina and Jesse Jr. In the climactic battle between Ellie and Abby, Ellie nearly achieves the revenge that she has been yearning for since the beginning, until a flashback of Joel appears, and she decides to finally end her tumultuous and harrowing vendetta and releases Abby. Generally, it appears that the cycle of revenge is a dominant motif in this story, as we are able to experience the damage that this cycle enforces on both the protagonist and the deuteragonist. I wonder if there is another series that features a brazen protagonist that goes on a path of vengeance but is somehow anti-inflammatory for the audience. Oh wait. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to not go into as much detail as God of War, since Clearly the franchise of God of War is much longer, but you'll get the point and see the parallels. At the beginning of Kratos' journey, he resides in the Greek city of Sparta, a highly combative region, with his younger brother Deimos. Unbeknownst to him, he is the son of Zeus, the head of the Greek pantheon. Based on the prophetic belief that one of his children would kill him, Zeus sent two of his children, Athena and Ares, to find the offspring. Due to the red markings, Deimos was the prime suspect and was taken away from Kratos to be given to the god of death, Thanatos. When he tried to rescue his brother, Kratos was given a scar over his eye. As a mark of remembrance, Kratos vows to never fail to protect a loved one again and gives himself the red mark of Deimos. After some time passes, Kratos has a wife and child and a whole Spartan army at his command. Due to his impending loss against the Eastern barbarians, Kratos pledges undying fidelity to Ares as long as he gains the advantage of the battle. Ares employs Kratos as his servant as well as binding him with the Blades of Chaos, thus signifying his allegiance. Under Ares' rule, Kratos relentlessly murders soldiers and civilians alike. However, his humanity was still tethered to his family. In order to cut this thread, Ares tricks Kratos into murdering his own wife and child. Kratos is then cursed to spend the rest of his days bearing the ashes of his family and is deemed the noteworthy title, the Ghost of Sparta. From this point on, Kratos battles to liberate himself from Ares' vow and to quell his desire for revenge against him. Kratos confronts Ares, which of course results in Ares killing Kratos. Luckily, in this universe, death can be denied once you escape the underworld, which is what Kratos does in order to take Ares man to man, or demigod to god rather, whatever you prefer. Kratos surmounts these machinations and impales Ares with a gargantuan sword from a nearby statue, killing him. Even though Kratos has fulfilled his revenge, his nightmares persist. Riddled with despair and depravity, Kratos sees death as the only escape route and leaps from a cliff to put his nightmares to sleep. Nah, lol. Athena just catches Kratos at the last moment and grants him the throne of the new god of war, which he accepts since he really doesn't have anything to lose at this point. Kratos then returns to his warmongering ways and wages numerous wars on behalf of the Olympians. Eventually, he finds out that his mother Callisto is alive, as well as his brother Deimos. Unfortunately for Kratos, both his mother and his brother end up dying, despite his efforts to save them, which causes Kratos to contemplate suicide yet again. However, Kratos pretty much backs down from suicide since he doesn't really see the point of doing it. Once again, Kratos buries himself deeper into the gruesome violence and decides to act against the Olympians' desires by attacking the city of Rhodes. As a result, Zeus descends from Mount Olympus and siphons Kratos' godly capabilities before piercing his heart with the Blade of Olympus. With the aid of the Titan Gaia and the Sisters of Fate, Kratos is able to use the temporal reverse card, except now he has the Blade of Olympus in his hands. When Kratos is about to inflict the killing blow upon Zeus, Athena jumps in the way to protect her father. Athena's dying wish is for Kratos to put an end to his path of retribution, as it would only result in a greater state of destruction for the world. Despite her pleas, Kratos affirms that he would have his revenge on all of the Olympian gods. Kratos then uses the Time Stone to fight the gods alongside the Titans. So now we're at the beginning of God of War 3, where Kratos is betrayed almost immediately by Gaia, who merely used him as a pawn to accomplish her ulterior motive. After being cast down into the river Styx, Kratos encounters the spirit of Athena, who implored Kratos to enact his revenge on Zeus. Apparently, her death gave her a new perspective on life. How profound. Athena gives Kratos the Blades of Exile, which he used to escape the underworld and steamroll the Greek pantheon, putting Hades, Helios, and Hermes to bed with a nursery rhyme. Due to his incessant indulgence with bloodlust, the world around Kratos continued to fall and he continued to pursue his desire for revenge. After making some more blissful executions and collecting Pandora, Kratos finds himself battling Zeus and Gaia simultaneously. He then uses the power of hope. No, not hentai starring Dr. Manhattan. I'm talking about the power of hope that comes from Pandora's box, to destroy the Titans, the gods, and his own dark past. Even though he vanquished his enemies, Kratos was riddled with futility, as he still was not satisfied with all the Olympians that he killed. After reading Zeus a bedtime story, Athena's apparition materializes and requests Kratos to utilize the power of hope to revitalize the world around him. However, at this point, Kratos decides to abandon his power and use the blade of Olympus to kill himself. Yet again. Before Kratos surrenders to his wounds, Athena tells him how disappointed she is, given that she is a victim of Kratos' insatiable thirst for retribution, and hoped that he would come around. After all that, Kratos relocates to the Nordic lands, impregnates a giant, and raises a son named Atreus, as he attempts to break the cycle and lead a more virtuous life. So, based on all that information, it is conspicuous that revenge plays a heavy theme in both The Last of Us 2 and the God of War franchise. And the similarities go far deeper as well. And as a matter of fact, both stories feature a violent protagonist with a morally dubious background, check, an inciting incident of loss, check, titillating imagery, a journey of tremendous death and destruction, check, loss of humanity through pursuit of vengeance, check, incapability of finding peace despite fulfilling desires, check, and attempts to break the cycle of harrowing retribution by spending time with loved ones and train them to be better than the protagonists themselves. Check. So I know it seems really inane and stupid to compare these two franchises, since one obviously has a scale that's much larger and has a lot more side characters. However, what exactly is the piece between two of these games that is so contrasting between the two, and that forces one group of people to just hate The Last of Us 2 over God of War? Chronology. You see, God of War is orchestrated in chronological order, whereas The Last of Us 2 just has a bunch of flashbacks interspersed throughout the whole game. You start off playing as Ellie and Jackson, okay? And then you embark on your revenge quest. You go John Rambo on all the obstructions in your path, and then what happens? Boom, flashback. You keep playing through these flashbacks until you meet up with Abby after putting her comrades to sleep, and then what happens? Boom, the scene just smash cuts to black, and now you're playing as Abby in a flashback. As I'm sure you know, many people are not pleased that they had to play as Abby for 10 hours.
What? What is this?
Abby.
This is Abby.
No!
Abs.
Are you fucking
Right on the other side of the
kidding me?
Oh no, now we have to play as baby Abby, oh god.
And honestly, I can understand why. Mainly, all of the criticisms revolving around playing as Abby are based on the fact that they simply don't care about what the story of Abby has to offer, since they just witnessed firsthand Abby murder their favorite character from The Last of Us 1. I feel like the whole reason why Joel's death was just so burdening for some people, well, for everybody really, including me, is because Joel wasn't exactly the hero of The Last of Us 1, but he was admired as the hero of the story because his act of just preserving what he loved, it pretty much unveils this flaw that he has within himself, and that's a flaw that all of us have, so therefore that makes him more relatable. So I can understand that. Given all the flaws in how it was executed, I actually find the premise of swapping between the different narratives really intriguing and ingenious. I really especially liked how it subverted my expectations. However, I feel like the game would benefit tenfold if the flashbacks were implemented a little less sporadically, and if we also got to experience more of Abby's background before she snuffs out Joel.
It's time to let old things die.
Another aspect, aside from just chronology, that really makes people less invested in The Last of Us 2 versus the God of War series is that in God of War, the side characters that they have in there, although they're not developed all too much, you are able to clearly see the relationship that they have with Kratos. And by those other side characters, I'm talking about Athena and pretty much all of the Olympian gods that Kratos wants to murder. However, with Ellie, it starts off with Dina and Jesse, who honestly aren't bad characters, but they're just really not developed enough in order to get people to care about them on Ellie's degree. Same thing goes with Abby. It's bad enough that we already start off with all of them going against Joel, the main hero of the last game, right? So we already do not like these characters too much, And then as we experience Ellie murdering them throughout the game, then we end up cutting back to Abby and how she has these relationships with them. We simply just don't have that much admiration for these characters at all. And honestly, I feel like that just needed to be worked on a little bit more in tandem with the timeline. And I feel like that would have definitely improved the game's narrative. Now, I know you're probably saying to yourself,
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
and you're absolutely right. I mean, this is just my opinion at the end of the day, and I want to know yours too. What were your thoughts about The Last of Us 2? What are your thoughts about God of War? Did you find the ending for The Last of Us 2 to be disenchanting? Please do share your opinion in the comment section, and hopefully we'll have a nice civil discussion on this subject matter. Now, you have free will, so I'm not going to tell you to subscribe or to smash that like button, but however, it's not like I'm gonna hold you at gunpoint or anything. That would just be crazy. Anyways, I am thirsty, I am tired. I'm gonna go play The Last of Us 1 now. Have a good one, and I will see you next time.